Welcome back. We have a New Year snap for you. Have a look at this. It's the Swiss ski resort of Villars-sur-Helon. And as you can see, it doesn't really look like what you would expect a ski resort to look like at this time of year. Much more green than white.
And in fact, there are resorts all over the Alps right now which also find themselves in that same grim situation. And this is the reason why. Parts of Europe are experiencing one of the warmest winters for a very long time. In fact, the Swiss state forecaster said that some places have experienced the hottest temperatures ever for this time of year.
Right. Is it a blip then, or part of a wider trend due to climate change? Well, earlier on, we spoke to Dr Radhika Khosla, a climate change expert from the University of Oxford, and we started by asking her about what exactly is a winter heatwave.
So a winter heat wave is very similar to what we have experienced right now in many European countries, which is extraordinarily warm temperatures, much different to what the average has been for decades previously. So, for instance, what we've seen right now in Poland is to have 19 degrees in winter when it's usually 1 or 2 degrees. So seeing a difference of 15 degrees Celsius in the winter from what temperatures have been historically for many, many years and decades, as opposed to this sudden shift annually, is what we would categorize as a heat wave in winter, which is essentially an extreme weather pattern that has emerged over a short period of time.
So the extreme heat that we're seeing in parts of Europe and the extreme cold that we're seeing in some parts of North America, is that linked?
Well, I think what we can say very confidently is that every heat wave occurring today has been made more intense and more likely because of climate change. And likewise, every extreme weather event, whether it is of heat or of cold, is likely linked to climate change. And so they are linked in that matter that their intensity and their likelihood is because of a changing climate globally and warming temperatures that we're seeing around the world.
In terms of what we did see in the likes of America over winter, the extreme cold, the extreme snow, would you say that's down to climate change? Or, could it be, some people could argue, it's just a cold winter this time round?
The impact of climate change on extreme heat and heat waves is well understood and well documented. And the truth is that the impacts of climate change on winter storms are still undergoing research. And that is the subject of ongoing research. Now, whether this particular event is linked to climate change and anthropogenic sources, or whether it is part of a different kind of weather pattern, is not something we know. But what we do know more broadly is that climate change is bringing about these extreme weather conditions in heat and in cold. And we understand that better for heat waves, and we're looking at that more closely for winter storms.
We've seen that some experts are talking about what we're seeing in Europe at the moment and calling it the most extreme weather event in European history. Would you go that far? And are we going to see more of these?
Well, I think the second part of your question is actually the more pertinent one, right? Which is to say that, is this the beginning of something that we're going to see a lot more of? And if that is indeed the case, and that is what the science predicts, then the question becomes, how do we deal with that? And how do we respond to that? We know just this summer, the extreme heat in Europe caused 20,000 deaths. So these extremes are actually really dangerous, and we need to take urgent action to stop them. And we need to respond to them in manners that don't perpetuate the problem.
So what would you say needs to be done? What should those dramatic changes look like?
So the dramatic changes are needed both for mitigation and for adaptation. And the levers of change that we could think of are a number, starting with technological change, using governance models, using business models, using cultural and behavioral norms and habits, and then using infrastructure as ways and means to move us away from incumbent energy-intensive practices. For instance, like using an air conditioner for extreme heat, and moving instead towards practices that are sustainable, that provide thermal comfort and don't damage the environment.
Dr. Khosla, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.